Jonathan Bing represents parts of Manhattan, and he is joining us from New York City tonight. Assemblyman, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So what took so long? I mean, New York is the last state, and this actually languished in the legislature, in the Assembly in particular, for over 2 decades.
It did. Finally, I think a large group of organizations and groups came together, as well as advocates, to finally move this bill forward. And in a year where as you've been reporting for months, a lot of things didn't happen or happened that perhaps should not have, here is something which changes New York State's social policy and finally brings New York into the 21st century when it comes to divorce law.
Now, the last time this actually came up for a vote in your House, it was yanked from the floor because there was insufficient support and it looked like it was going to fail. That was in the 80s. And then there were two decades worth of time that nothing happened. Is that because of the opposition, you think, because from the church?
I think it's a combination of the opposition from conservative social groups as well as from some women's organizations. But over time, the women's organizations have actually turned around and supported no-fault divorce, most notably the Women's Bar Association, which as recently as 5 or 6 years ago opposed it, and this year were the strongest supporters of it. One thing that I did this year, and this is the first year that I had carried the legislation, was put together a coalition of legislators from around the state, upstate, downstate, urban, rural, Republican, Democrats, to sponsor the bill, such that by the time it did come up, the possibility of it coming up on the floor happened, there were already 70 members of the Assembly with their names on the bill, so that it was clear that it was going to be able to get the 76 votes it needed to pass.
Well, one of the ways that you managed to build together this coalition of people is that the bill got tweaked a little bit to address concerns about maintenance and also concerns about people receiving adequate legal representation, usually women who tend to be the member of a couple who has less in the way of resources. Can you talk about those changes?
Sure. The no-fault divorce bill was one part of a 3 or 4 bill package that passed together in the Assembly. The other bills having to do with counsel fees and with maintenance. Some domestic violence groups supported no-fault, but only if the other bills were part of the package. So having the package together did get some groups that did in theory support no-fault, but wanted other things to be part of the package to support the legislation, so that by the end, the domestic violence groups, all the bar associations, many newspapers around the state, as well as legislators from around the state were very supportive of the bill. And as you mentioned before, a bill that had failed to ever pass the Assembly or get to the floor years ago, passed the Assembly by 120 to 20, such that we were able to really have a wide coalition and have an overwhelming group of people support the bill that had never really happened before.
How did you address the problem of the Catholic Church, which believes that basically this debases marriage? It makes it too easy for people to dissolve their marriages and not willing to work on them where maybe they would, you know, if it was more difficult. I mean, you're talking about a state in which you have to wait a year plus, and then you have to go through these onerous hoops in order to really break up your marriage.
Right. Well, I think we explained to the legislators, and again, we had many people on the bill, many sponsors of the bill that come from conservative social communities. But we explained, first of all the ancillary issues with regard to a marriage have to be resolved before a no-fault divorce is issued, such as child support, alimony, visitation, all those things. Also, there is a 6-month waiting period. This is not the equivalent of divorce on demand. There's a 6-month waiting period where there has to be shown to be that a marriage cannot be repaired before a no-fault decree would be issued. So, which is only 6 months less than what currently is under law. So, but I think most importantly, people realize that requiring fault to be determined, especially when there are children involved, was really devastating to families. To force children have to go through determining which one of their parents is responsible for breaking up the marriage, when the parents in many cases don't want that to have to happen, was really devastating to them. And I think that people saw that and saw that it had worked in other states, saw that the domestic violence rates and female suicide rates in states that adopted no-fault divorce declined markedly, and realized that it was about time for this to happen in New York State.
There is one women's group, it's Now New York State, which actually split with its city counterpart and is opposing this law, or did oppose until it was signed into law, really at the 11th hour actually by the governor on Saturday before the midnight deadline. And they say that it's actually worrisome because women who don't have enough means could get really not the amount that that they should from their spouses who have more money. How can you